and I am not about to walk through this nasty stuff. It is like a, that's what's going to take a couple months to dry up for sure. Well, what's up, guys? It's Daniel from Arms Family Homestead, and 8 days ago we cut the dam on our pond that was once upon a time a trophy bass pond and had some trophy sized bluegill and a ton of bait fish. 8 days ago. And I told you guys in that video not to expect a lot of work on the pond for quite a while because it takes so long to dry up. But your curiosity and mine are probably about the same. I want to know, what's this process going to look like? This is the first time I've ever done it. So we cut the dam and drained the pond for a couple reasons. After I posted that video on YouTube, it is kind of somewhat taken off. As of today, I think it's at like 600 and something thousand views. And once it made it past our normal subscribers that watch all of our videos, all the comments started off with, you shoulda, or you ought to, or why didn't you? And that's okay. I didn't quite answer all of the questions in that first original video. So first off, why did we cut the dam and drain the pond? And is that even legal? Well, yes, it's legal here. We cut the dam for two reasons, really. We had a bad fish kill, lost a bunch of bass, and we want to basically drain the pond to expand it and make it bigger and make a much better fishery. Second, this pond was over 30 years old, probably close to 35, 37, something like that. I'm not exactly sure. My dad had this pond built in the 90s, sometime in the early 90s. And basically took a big ditch and flooded it. Now they dug out an area where this deep part is out in front of the dam. It was originally over 15 feet deep. Now it was more like 12, somewhere between 10 and 12 in a lot of that. But back in most of this pond, it was habitat built for bass. So flooded a ditch and left all the timber. But over the years that has silted in, it's filled in, and what used to be, well, it still was a good fishery, still was a good place to fish, but it has silted in so much over the years that it just was not able to do what we wanted to do. So the way the contour of the land is, the way everything lays around here, if we raise the dam somewhere between, well, the goal is 8 feet. I'm hoping somewhere between 6 and 8, but if we can raise the dam 8 feet, this goes from I think I said 2 acres, it's really about 1.5 acres under normal water levels, 1.5 acre pond up to about a 4 acre pond. So it's going to be a lot of work, and we should get done today, I think, right? I mean, right? No? Okay, no, I'm not doing all of the work, all the excavation work in here by myself. There's just no way. It's going to take some big, heavy equipment. And I said in that original video that it will take, a couple months to dry out. But I've been kind of checking things and looking over the last 8 days. We have had a couple rains, and with rain comes grass, and places where it's still a little bit moist, the grass is starting to explode, because obviously this is probably some very fertile soil. But I'm going to walk around the pond a little bit, kind of show you guys. You can see what's dry and what's still wet. And you can really kind of tell in some areas where and how thick the muck layer was, if that makes sense. There's some areas like this was probably some bluegill beds for years. I don't know if you guys can see them on here very well. But there's little circles right there, and it's down to gravel. There's no muck here. But that's because fish over the years have constantly fanned this out. But you can see where they weren't fanning, we've got this layer of silt, of muck. Some areas of the pond, that muck layer is a couple inches. Some areas, I think it may be as much as a foot deep. So let's look around a little bit. So while we have had a couple rains, maybe 2.5 inches of rain over the last week, and in August in southern Oklahoma, we'll take that anytime. It's not helping the drying process. But when it's not raining, it's been over 100 degrees. Today, we had a cool front. The high today is 92. So, cool front, but we're at 52% humidity. I checked the weather before I came over here. Unbelievably humid. And out here on this muddy pond, it's even worse. So, probably going to get a little sweaty. But you can see that it's really starting to dry and crack. And it will really get some big cracks, but the places where it's cracked like this is where that muck layer is the deepest. And I really am curious. There's no way I can get out on this area with that skid steer. I'll get stuck in a hurry because, like I said in that first video, maybe it was a follow-up video after that when I did a little update and showed, but what'll happen is you get a nice hard crust that people can walk on, but you get a piece of machinery out here and it's vibrating, it'll bring all that moisture to the surface and you'll sink. So I can walk on some of this, but as you can see, it's like a chocolate pie or something. But there's areas that you can really tell where it's more dry. And this stuff like this, it may be, like I said, a couple months before we can even attempt to get anything out here, because it just turns to slop so fast. I want to get over and show you that ditch if I can get there. Oh, I never hit bottom on some of this stuff. I got to find a drier route. One thing I was going to say while I was out here, I told you guys this pond was built with bass in mind, and bass love structure, but we need more depth out of the pond. Obviously, if we raise the dam, we're going to get more depth, but we're going to be removing a lot of this brush and trees so that we can get down. We're going to have to push the muck out of here and get down to original soil, and then we'll excavate a lot of that out and move it to the dam. I think is probably going to be our plan. Still don't know if I can get to that ditch. Oh, don't go that way. I think I'll just go a different route. Okay, so original water line, it kind of dropped off a little bit, and then bam, it falls off into that ditch. This was probably 2 feet deep where that slope starts, and then it dropped off into, I don't know, 4 to 6 feet deep. But you can see that ditch just runs through here, and it goes through the entire length of the pond. Still don't know if I can go this way either. Looks solid, but when you break through, you just sink. All right, made it. So the muck layer, all that is going to have to come out, and obviously we're going to try to clean a lot of that out. But you can see there's the difference here. There's just the actual, I don't know what you'd call it, virgin soil, the actual real ground that was here before, and all of that slope right there. It's going to be quite the project, and eventually I'd love to get out here with the Cotto mini excavator and start plucking a lot of these stumps out, because it's just a minefield of stumps. Now, you could come in here with a dozer and just push, but I think it'd be better to clean up a lot of this, pile it out of the way, maybe burn some of it, I want to save a lot of the structure that we can, but we're obviously going to be cleaning this out, and some things are just going to have to go. You can't just work around all of it. And I want to get this nasty muck layer out of here. So I think I'm going to kind of work around a little bit with the skid steer today, probably on some of the drier areas, and just see how far down some of that moisture goes. But what I may do is eventually kind of work my way in with the skid steer and then bring the excavator and just pluck a lot of those little things out. I don't want to get the excavator over here and get it stuck. That thing, I'm just still new at running it, but I think I can get it stuck a lot faster than I would the skid steer. So there's a couple of the artificial structures that we added. I didn't realize that one had fallen and kind of got watered up into a tree over there. This one, I tried to put it in that ditch, but really honestly, this thing had so much natural structure that that stuff really wasn't needed in this area. But I didn't know that big cedar tree was laying in there. But it's been there for 30 years probably. You can still see the original root ball. Isn't that just crazy? This stuff has like been preserved in time. So there's my structure, my fish structure that we added. And when I put it in, it was closer to that tree. So I don't know how it got moved, but somebody probably got hung up in it and drug it. But you can see the root ball from that cedar tree. And then that right there is perfect fish habitat. Yes, it's perfect habitat for getting your lure tangled and hung up, but there's no telling how many bass have hid in that and ambushed bait over the last 30 years. And I am not about to walk through this nasty stuff. It is like a, that's what's going to take a couple months to dry up for sure. So it's kind of interesting to me, and I've said this before, it's very interesting to me to be able to see places in this pond where we know we caught fish over there, where we caught bass, where we caught bluegill. There's a lot of artificial structure laying on the ground that we added over there, and we put it just above that hump, kind of going into a flat, and it worked great. It caught, brought in a lot of fish. We caught a lot of fish there, and I don't know. It's neat to see this because it was built before I can really remember. I knew there were a lot of trees and stumps and stuff out in here. I really honestly didn't realize how many there were. It's crazy. But I think it's encouraging. We can do a little bit of work at a time. Obviously, some of this stuff, you're not going to be able to get in here with a machine for months. It's just a soupy, sloppy mess. But this big flat area like that will dry out much faster. While it's got several inches of muck on it, I can still get in there and work it a little bit, open up the ground, let it dry, pile up some of that muck. I don't really have anything to haul it off with, or I'd love to have like a dump trailer that we could get in here, fill it up, and go stockpile that stuff, because you don't want that muck on your pond dam. We can't use the layer of this nasty goop on our pond dam. That's not going to work. So we've got to clean this stuff up, pile it up somewhere so that we can maybe later, after it sets for a while, spread on some fields or something. We can use it somewhere, but we've got to get a lot of it out. And that's why I say this is going to be a long, slow process, because it's not just a big empty bowl like a lot of farm ponds. That at least answers a couple questions. I kind of can get a grasp of how muddy it's going to be. This is actually very, very wet still, but it's not too much for the skid steer to get around on. It's not sinking by any means. Like just a few inches of this stuff, you know, will put you deep in some nastiness. So my theory of, can I kind of work my way into some trails, basically work my way out there, kind of clean up a little bit, and then let that dry, and I'll be able to get in here with the excavator and just pluck all those things out. Yes, I could put a grapple on the skid steer, which, by the way, if you didn't notice, I'm using the least used implement that I own for my skid steer, the front bucket. Really, honestly, it's never on the machine. But I could come out here with a grapple and, you know, that tree that I just knocked down and a few things, but switching back and forth is a pain. And when you have two different implements, you know, it makes more sense. So I'm going to do some work with the skid steer. The excavator's at my buddy's shop in town. He's been working on his foundation to rebuild his store from the tornado aftermath. But yeah, I think this will dry out fairly fast enough that we can get in and do some work and have it at least prepped and ready for when we get in here with a big bulldozer and a big excavator and start really moving some dirt. I know it may look like a mess to most of you, but this is actually working really well with just the skid steer. And really all I'm doing is just pulling out the muck and silt and stuff. And what I've found is there's actually very good clay layer underneath everything. And you can really tell when you get down to it, because that's when it gets slick. So as I'm scooping and moving, as long as I'm not spinning my tracks, I know I haven't made it down to the good clay bottom yet, the original bottom. But back here towards the back of the pond, there may be, I mean, there's a lot of silt. There's a lot of decaying leaf matter and all that stuff, but a lot of it is really just what's washed in from the drainage coming into the pond, I think. So here's what I'm talking about. When I get down into this stuff, it gets really soupy, but you can tell there's really good clay in here, even though it's wet right there. But there's some areas like over here where it's gonna take a while to dry. Clay takes forever to dry, but that's really good clay bottom for a pond. But you can really absolutely tell on that skid steer when you get down to that clay liner. Not that this was hauled in. We had no clay hauled in. This is just a flooded ditch, basically. So it's all what was here. And obviously the pond held water really good for the last, 35 years. But you can see back here, there's an old tree right here, okay? So the tree roots start down here. So the original ground line would have been down here when the pond was built, when it was flooded, not a foot up higher. There's at least a foot of just silt and muck and all of that stuff back here. And like I said earlier, I want to try to get as much of this moved as I can before it turns into a field full of tall grass, because this stuff is going to grow grass quickly. But it's working. It's all going to have to be moved again. But when we do get in here with some heavy equipment, I mean, really, I'm just saving myself hours of labor and expense and paying someone else to scoop all this out and pile it up. So we're obviously going to have a dump truck come in and just fill truckloads with this stuff and just haul it out of here. But man, some of this stuff, there's maybe 2 feet that has to come out to get down just to, the original ground level. As you can see, I'm just trying different things in different places. And like I said earlier, I want to be able to get the excavator in here and pull all this stuff out. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of little trails like that. But this is a pretty good example of just how much muck and just years of leaves decaying and things have built up in this pond. I mean, just reference, I've got really large hands, and that's easily a foot deep in just a few scoops that I've done right here. And you can tell I'm just now getting down to the original soil level, but it's solid clay underneath. So it's very encouraging to see that. I hope there's a lot of clay out in here, and then after we get a lot of this muck out of here, we'll have a lot of really good clay to move to the dam. At least that's my hope. But this is crazy. And this is what I said. This area here, you're talking 18 inches, maybe 2 feet. This will take forever to dry out from this level. I know it's cracking and get sunlight down in there, and that helps. But that right there is why you can't bring a bulldozer or a big heavy excavator out on top of this stuff, because it will absolutely sink down, and this will just gum up the tracks and it won't be able to go anywhere. As that excavator or bulldozer or whatever it is vibrates, it just shakes all that mud and it turns it into just like jello, and it brings all the moisture to the surface, and within a few minutes it would just turn into a mud hole. So doing this will allow that actual clay bottom to dry out, hopefully a lot faster. We'll see. Well, cameraman, what do you think?
This is gonna be crazy.
It's gonna be a big pond, I hope.
It is.
It's gonna be a lot of work.
Yes.
And what I've done today is just like the tip of the iceberg. But if we don't do anything at all, it's going to take a long time. It will eventually dry out to where we could just come in here with heavy equipment and just push everything. But
We don't have time for that.
Houston says we don't have time for that. I think it's better to come in here and at least try to do what we can and help some of this stuff dry out. And you know, I mean, there's places like this little ditch that ran into the pond that it's just going to be soupy for a while. And as you can see, the closer to that little ditch you get, yeah, soft, isn't it?
One step, it's not very soft, and then the second step, and it's like straight down.
Yep. But I think this will give us a good head start. There's a lot of good clay in here. This is getting really slippery, but exposing that clay will help get down and get that layer dried out, and we can get rid of the muck, get rid of a lot of the debris. And as much as I know that a lot of these trees are good to have, and we'll probably leave some stumps and some things, but a lot of these little stobs are going to have to come out if we want to clean the pond out. So a lot of the big ones like that, and maybe, you know, like this tree that has a whopper plopper. Where's it at?
Straight up on that limb.
Oh, I can't see it. Oh, yeah, there's a whopper plopper right there. I will probably knock that tree down, but maybe leave the stump, leave some of the stumps, and just clean around some of that stuff, because we want fish habitat. And obviously we're going to bring in more structure, and there's just a lot of trees out here that when I knock them down, we may pile them up and save them and make some structure. We'll bring in some rock, we'll bring in some gravel and have a whole new type of structure. And you know, I want to leave some features like that big ditch that runs through there. You know, we want to leave some of that stuff to make it more natural, because I feel like a lot of ponds are nothing but a big bowl, a big bowl of bare ground with nothing in them, no structure, no ledges and drop-offs and ditches and points and things like you see in a lake. Most people build a pond, they just doze out a bowl, push up a dam, let it fill full of water, and it's just a big fish bowl. Well, we want to grow big bass. We want natural habitat, and part of that is structure, part of that's ledges and ditches and all that stuff. So I don't know, I'm very intrigued by all this. I'm not an expert. I really have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just winging it. But I do know I'm going to hire some folks to come in and really do most of the work for us. But the more of this other stuff that I can get done, I feel like the faster we can get them in here to do some real work. One thing about it, it's definitely a big project and it's going to take a while. I wish I could tell you guys we'll have this thing done in a month, and that's just not the case. I don't know how long this is going to take. I really don't know what it's going to cost. It's going to be an expensive project for sure, but I think in the long run it's justifiable, it's worthwhile, it's worth it for us, it's worth it for our family, and it's just, I don't know, I've said this 100 times. It's amazing to me that I get to do this stuff for a living. You know, I spent 14 years in law enforcement as a state trooper, and never dreamed that I would not be in that job. And the fact that I get to stay home, do stuff with the family, do stuff with the kids, go to the gym with my wife, and make content for you guys and get paid for it is truly a dream job. And I promise you, I appreciate every single minute of it. And I hope you guys do too. I hope you guys don't think that I complain about subscribers and complain about comments and all that stuff, because that's really not the case. I do bring things up occasionally because I think it needs to be addressed. And sometimes I don't do a good job of explaining everything. Like on the original video when we cut the dam, I didn't think that video would take off and get that many views. I assume everybody watching has seen the pond for the last 5 years and knows what's going on, and that's not the case. So I hope this maybe cleared up some things for some of the new subscribers that we've got. We picked up a lot of new subscribers and followers over the last week or so, and well, welcome aboard, I guess. So anyways, I'm gonna track this thing back to the house. It's a muddy mess. I'm gonna have to put some diesel in it. Oh, log. Oh, stick. Oh, track this thing back to the house, clean up. I'm probably not gonna wash it, honestly. I'm gonna spend many more days over here cleaning out that pond, and hopefully we'll get a contractor over here soon to look at it and kind of get some ideas of what I need to be doing and have at least somewhat of a game plan. Eventually I'm gonna have to get my buddy over here that's got the bulldozer and start pushing some timber around the pond, because we've got to move the water level up the bank so far. I want to take out some of the timber. We'll probably leave some standing timber in the pond with some of the trees that are alive now. So we'll eventually have some standing dead timber there too. So anyways, guys, remember, do something today to make somebody smile, because you never know, it just might change the world. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. You guys have a great day. And as always, we'll see you on the next video.